I'm Mr. Root today, just in case you have any legal questions, please do not ask me.
I got one for you.
Great. It's 11 a.m. on September 13th, 2022. I call to order this Oconee County Council Millage Workshop. Moment of silence, please. Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being as Mr. Root is absent today, Mr. Elliott asked me to lead us in a prayer. Please pray with me if you will. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful day you've created. Thank you for all those who are gathered here today. Thank you for the many residents of this county. And thank you for the opportunities that we've all been given. I pray that you would give us all wisdom as we seek to do what is always in the best interests of the people of this county. And I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis, please.
Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, discussion items, overview or reassessment process. Mr. Kevin Robinson.
Thank you. Ms. Brock asked me to come and speak today just to sort of give some context, some background of what reassessment is. I know there are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of confusion around that. So I just wanted to give you sort of a brief overview, nothing really formal, before Ms. Hubbard will present the actual numbers in a PowerPoint presentation a little bit later. So what is reassessment? A lot of us have had, we've bought and sold houses, we've had mortgages, we've had appraisals done of our house. And we're probably very used to the normal appraisal where an appraiser goes out and does 3, 4, 5 comps, makes adjustments and says, this is what your house is worth. We do not do that. I want to make sure that's clear. We don't do that. The reason is we have over 65,000 properties in this county. If we were to do that and only spend 1 hour per property, which is much less than an appraiser does, it would be about 8,000 to 10,000 hours in a year that each of our appraisers would be working. That's obviously impossible. We can't do that. So how do we do it? We use computer modeling. We use mass appraisal. And basically what that is you take a look at the sales that are occurring in a given neighborhood, a given market area as we define. And you see if you build a model that tries to replicate those sales values. If your model is not replicating them accurately, you make some adjustments to that model. We do that every year. We do that with what we call assessable transfer of interest sales. So any given year, if a property sells, we're going to reappraise that. We're going to look at that model, see if it's working correctly or not, see if we need to make adjustments there. The big difference in a reassessment year is that we apply those adjustments to the whole county. So any adjustments that we have made to the model are then applied to the whole county, and then we'll repeat that cycle in about 5 years. So I wanted to kind of cover that briefly. This reassessment, we did just that. An important point to consider is that there is a control date or a date evaluation that we're using for this. In this case, it is December of 2020, not 2021, not 2022. I know there's been a lot of volatility, a lot of almost exponential growth in the market that we've seen lately. We're looking all the way back at 2020. If you'll remember with me, I don't really like remembering this, but early 2020 is when COVID began. There was a lot of sort of weird stuff going on in the market. We have to look at all those sales from that entire year, January to December 2020. We look at those sales and make our adjustments based on that. So that's sort of a brief overview of what the reassessment is. I think it's also really important to mention that there is an appeal process to a reassessment. So if you receive an assessment notice and you disagree with this value, we want that appeal. We're not trying to force an incorrect value on anyone. We want you to come speak to us so we can get our data correct, we can get that value corrected. We're going to work with you as best we can to get that right. let's see, another thing quickly that Ms. Hubbard may mention. There was a law passed recently, actually just a few months ago, that exempted farm buildings from property tax. So we have implemented that as best we can now, and I wanted just to make you aware of it. It's essentially any farm building used by a producer in this county. It's not really well defined, but we went through and we identified any buildings that we could that we believe fit this criteria. We exempted them from property taxes. The total initially was about 5,784 improvements. And when I talk about improvements, you can think chicken houses, barns, dairy buildings, things like that are used by farmers in this area. The assessed value of those improvements was $1,351,000. That's the assessed value, not the market value. So the impact on taxes is roughly $300,000 or 2 mills or so. That was what we initially removed. Of course, as people come in on a day-to-day basis and apply for agricultural use exemption, we may remove more. If a property sells and is no longer used for agricultural purposes, it may come back on the tax rolls. So that's changing on a day-to-day basis, but that gives you a good sort of baseline amount of how that has impacted Oconee County specifically. So I hope that's sort of a general overview. I think Ms. Hubbard has a PowerPoint that's going to give some more detailed numbers for you to work off of. And then I believe afterwards, if you have any questions, we'd both be happy to answer anything that you may have.
Mr. Chairman, on the
Yes.
assessments, so Mr. Robinson's up there right now. A couple of good things to mention. It's always great to have an assessment in a median year. It's never, you don't want it in a high year and you don't want it in a low year. So to me, the timing of the assessment is always helps everyone, including as we budget as council members and from a citizen standpoint. It's also important to note that if you go on and review assessments of each property, the assessment of what we do is very fair. If you look on, sales value, which is what other assessments placed on, but as an assessed property of somebody that has lived in a home for quite some time is extremely fair and honestly extremely low, which is very, very fair to our citizens. So you look on there and you may see a property that's assessed at $250,000 that's, up for market or sold for $375,000 or $400,000. So if you look under that assessment ratio, we give a very fair assessment and tax value for that. So that kind of speaks volumes to the other parameters that we get our taxes from. The farm building, there's a lot of counties in this state that are vastly affected by the farm buildings. I am definitely in favor of how the state is taking those farm buildings out of taxes. So I know it is a loss for there, but that has been talked about for a period of 5 or 6 years, and that's been coming through the Association of Counties meetings. And, when we began talking about budgeting over the last several years, there has been talks of what that will look like and do. So I know Mr. Kane was the chairman of Association of Counties, so there has been a lot of talks, and Ms. Brock and her team, your team, and Ms. Hubbard's team as well has tried to prepare and talk about that. And so I am grateful to be part of a council that prepared for that, so it wasn't, hey, we've got to go up in taxes. And as we have began to budget for 6 years plus and talking about losing agricultural properties, the growth of agriculture in Oconee County hopefully will continue, and this is an encouragement to those that are on agriculture. And I have several buildings on my property and in my family that does help. It's a small help, but it is help. So, grateful to see that it's not going to affect, because the last thing you want to do is lose agricultural properties and have to raise taxes. And as we'll see today, that's not in there. So I appreciate that y'all preparing for that and discussing that with staff. So in this council preparing for that there's not going to be a tax increase because of that, because that's not the same in other parts of the state. So thank you for that.
And I think it's important that the public know that we're basing this on 2020 prices, because the sales in the last 21 to 22 up 25%, and they came out with the CPI this morning, still at 8.3% year over year. And so the Fed's gonna go up either 75 or 100 basis points next week. So fixed mortgages, 30-year fixed mortgages will be 7%, which means home prices and home sales are gonna go down. And we're gonna see a stop to some of this home building in Oconee County because of that. So I think it's important we get to 2025, and maybe we haven't recovered back to 2022 prices, we won't have to have a tax increase. I think that's important that the public knows that.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Robinson, could you repeat the number that you said for the ag improvements?
The assessed value was 1.3 million, a little over 1.3 million. So that equates to roughly $300,000 in property taxes using last year's millage rate, or about 2 mills. There were 5,000.
1.3 million in assessed value? Okay.
Yeah, there were over 5,000 of those structures.
That seems low for 5,000.
That's not market value, so that's assessed.
Yeah.
That's applying the 4%
I understand.
assessment ratio.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right. But okay, I got you. My other question is, could you just give a little bit of an overview when reassessment occurs and your property value has gone up? Say it's gone up 20% over the 5 years. What happens in that circumstance, or anything? Could you talk about state law and that cap?
Sure. So there's a 15% cap on the taxable value of any property. So as a result of reassessment, that cap does not apply if it's an assessable transfer of interest, a new construction home, things like that. But as a result of this reassessment, the most taxable value can go up is 15%. There are properties out there that were taxed based on previous reassessments, 1, 2, 3 reassessments ago. So those will rise as well to catch up to the market value. Again, they can only go up 15%. So that's the maximum amount there. And I will mention ATIs as well. Those are ongoing every year. So even if you have, let's say, 20% growth over a 5-year period between reassessments, a lot of that growth is already captured as we process these ATIs. We do between 3,000 and 5,000 or more as the sales are growing actually now per year. We go ahead and capture that growth that has occurred, and when the market value is the year of the sale in those cases rather than a reassessment year. So a lot of that is you already see it in the numbers. You already see it in the values. And those properties, again, there's still a 15% cap as a result of the reassessment, but when the ATI is processed, any cap values are removed. So it goes back to market value at that point.
When you say ATI, that's
Assessable
when it's
transfer of
sold, excuse me.
Any arm's length transaction, so a valid sale that had sufficient market exposure, the participants were willing participants, it's not a foreclosure or a family transfer or something like that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Okay, next up is the millage presentation, Mrs. Christie Hubbard.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Morning.
Every year I like to touch base on who does what. And as you guys know, you are the ones that will actually set the millage for the operational next Tuesday night, and I will set the millage for the bonds. Kevin basically just touched over what reassessment was, and what I'm really going to touch on is the calculation of reassessment. In a millage year, the calculation for millage is different. What you have to do is you take the prior year dollars collected divided by the current year assessed value minus growth to get your base millage. Every year we use the same assessments to calculate the base assessment, which is real estate, aircraft, boats and motors, documented vessels, business personal property, manufacturing, utilities, railroads, vehicles, legal residential assessment, and manufacturing abatement. Sorry, I'm not good at clicking and talking. So what we did is I took the total dollars collected minus fees and any other sources that comes in that's not allowed for for millage, and the total was 136 million last year. And then you basically take the percentage of the county and the percentage of the school millage from last year, and you come up with your total dollars. So the total dollars last year for the county was 44.7 million, and the total dollars for the schools was a little over 53 million. The growth this year for the school is 4.2%, and the growth for the county is 3.3%. And these actually vary because of the manufacturing abatement and the legal residential exemptions that change year to year. So for the county operational, when you do the calculation, our base millage needs to be right at 73.1. And if we capture growth, we actually can go up to 75.7 or 0.8 mills. Same thing for the school. Their base millage after the calculation should be a 111.1 to 112.1. Next, I've shown you the value of a mill and how it has grown over the past 12 months. The county operations value of a mill this year is $602,892, where last year it was $586,604. For school operational, it is $448,510, where last year it was $422,809. And for school bonds, it is $650,510, whereas last year it was $622,809. For millage purposes, I always have to take what you actually budget and remove some dollars. So basically for the millage this year, we are setting millage operational on 36.7 million, and for the school, a little over 50 million. County bonds this year is right at 1.4 million, and the school bonds is 18.2 million. Right now, looking at the numbers, the recommendation for county operations would be a total of 74.3 mills, which is a decrease of 3 from last year. School operations would be 111.6, and that's a decrease of 4.1 mil. County bonds would remain the same, and school bonds would go down 1 mil to 30. So that would be an overall decrease of 8.1 mils. I ran some numbers for you so you could actually see. So on a $25,000 vehicle with a millage decrease, a taxpayer would save $12.15. For a $15,000 vehicle, they would save $24.30. The next slide shows the difference in a flat base, a $250,000 house in 21 versus 22. A 6% property would save $121. Legal residence would save $44, and a home with homestead and legal residence would save a little over $43. I also ran a second calculation to show you that if a house increased 5% due to reassessment, what they would save, or what they would be charged more. So for a 6% $250,000 house, their taxes would be a little bit more than $41 this year. For legal residents, $9.15, and one with homestead would be $9.75. As of now, I'm still waiting on 2 towns to get back with me, but there's no change in town millage. And the Kiwi Fire District millage will be 17.5 mils as well. Anyone have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We had a tax increase a couple of years ago. The long-term plan was to see 2 to 3 decreases over the next 2 to 3 years. So by looking at where we were headed at on the growth, so with that plan, what we see happening here is continuing to be able to see a decrease in millage because of the growth of what we're seeing in this county. That's the things that we have to look at is how we, with this growth, the goal of this is to continue to lower taxes per each household, and that's what we're seeing here. Hopefully that continues, not just in this year, but the following year as well. So the manufacturing coming on, some of the student housing coming on, that's what we're, continuing to see here. So again, grateful to be able to continue to look towards the decrease with not an increase in sight. So we've been able to have a lot of great projects that we got moving forth on there. So, Mr. Elliott, over the chairman of the Budget Committee, I'm proud to be on this council, proud to be continuing to work towards these decreases moving forward for our citizens. As we have appeals coming forward, I also want to speak to that. The appeal process, I've had a lot of people come in for appeals, and they speak very highly of everything that y'all continue to do to help with that, make that process simple, and it's not like this challenging thing on there. So thankful for your staff for doing that through those appeal process.
I also have about a 5% number set in there for appeals off the real estate. So I think we will be good for the number that I've used based on the numbers that Kevin has given us this year.
Good. And then speaking with the school board, they are, see that as a positive too.
I spoke with them yesterday.
Yeah.
So they're on board.
They're in acceptance of it as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Any other questions, comments?
It's been something that in my tenure here, the goal has been to increase the value of the mill and decrease the mill ultimately. We did have some millage increases to help pay for more public safety as well as stabilizing our capital equipment needs, and we've accomplished those goals. I mean, we still have work to do, but it's great to see, the growth that's helping reduce. If your house did not go up in value, then you will be paying less in taxes. If your vehicle did not go up in value, you'll be paying less in taxes, and that's, assume this council accepts your recommendation Tuesday, we should see that. So thank you very much. Appreciate your work too and your team's work.